Have you ever heard of a war where one side was armed with machine guns, and the other side, well, the other side was just a bunch of very large, very fast birds? No, this isn't a cartoon plot. This is the real story of Australia's Great Emu War of 1932. It has a tale so bizarre, it sounds completely made up. But trust me, it's all true, and it's one of history's most hilarious and humbling military campaigns. So, grab your popcorn, and let's dive into the time when the Australian military declared war on birds and lost. The year is 1932. The Great Depression has hit the world hard, and Australia is no exception. In Western Australia, a group of World War I veterans had been given land by the government to become wheat farmers. It was a tough life, made even tougher by a sudden, massive migration. Around 20,000 emus, looking for water and food, descended upon the farmlands of the Campion district. 40 emus. This was a paradise, endless fields of delicious wheat. For the farmers, it was a catastrophe. These giant, flightless birds were trampling crops and tearing down fences, threatening their entire livelihood. Desperate, the farmers, many of whom were ex-soldiers, appealed to the government for help. They knew how to handle a rifle, but this was an invasion on a scale they couldn't manage alone. Their request was simple: send in the military. They specifically asked for machine guns, believing that modern firepower would make quick work of the feathered pests. The Minister of Defense, Sir George Spears, saw an opportunity. It would be great target practice for the soldiers, and a fantastic public relations move to show the government was supporting its veterans. So, he approved the operation. Major G.P.W. Meredith of the Royal Australian Artillery was put in charge. He was given to soldiers, Sergeant S. McMurray and Gunner J. and 2 Lewis machine guns, along with 10,000 rounds of ammunition. On paper, it looked like a ridiculously one-sided fight. What could a bunch of birds possibly do against trained soldiers with automatic weapons? The stage was set for what everyone assumed would be a swift and decisive victory for humanity. The media even sent a cinematographer to capture the glorious triumph. They couldn't have been more wrong. The first attempt at engagement happened on November 2nd. The soldiers spotted a flock of about 50 emus. They set up their machine gun and waited for the perfect shot. But the emus were smarter than they looked. They didn't flock together like sheep. Instead, they split into small groups, running in unpredictable patterns. When the soldiers opened fire, the birds scattered in all directions at incredible speeds, reaching up to 30 miles per hour. The gunner couldn't track them. After firing hundreds of rounds, they'd only managed to take down a handful of emus. The rest just ran off, completely unfazed. A few days later, the soldiers planned an ambush near a local dam, where over 1,000 emus were spotted heading for water. This was their chance. They set up the Lewis gun, hidden and ready, but as they opened fire, the gun jammed after just a dozen shots. Before they could fix it, the 1,000-strong emu army had vanished over the horizon, leaving the soldiers standing in a cloud of dust and frustration. Major Meredith was stunned. He later remarked that each emu pack seemed to have its own leader, a large, black-plumed bird that would keep watch and give a signal to scatter at the first sign of danger. He said, "If we had a military division with the bullet-carrying capacity of these birds, it would face any army in the world. They can face machine guns with the invulnerability of tanks." The soldiers tried different tactics. They mounted one of the machine guns on a truck, hoping to chase the emus down. This turned into a chaotic, bumpy chase across the rough terrain. The gunner couldn't aim properly. The truck couldn't keep up with the agile birds, and at one point, the truck crashed through a farmer's fence, causing even more damage. Not a single emu was hit during this disastrous chase. The whole operation was becoming a farce. In nearly a week of war, the army had used over 2,500 rounds of ammunition to kill, at best, a few dozen emus. Some reports say it was closer to 50, others say a few hundred. But either way, it was a terrible ratio. The cost of the ammunition far outweighed the damage the emus were causing. The media, which had initially been excited to report a national victory, now began to mock the entire affair. Newspapers ran headlines, making fun of the military's failure. One politician in the Australian Parliament sarcastically asked if a medal would be awarded for the war. The public found the whole thing hilarious. The image of the mighty Australian army being outsmarted by a bunch of birds was just too good to pass up. The operation was a public relations disaster. Less than a week after it began, Major Meredith and his men were recalled. The Great Emu War, Round 1, was over. The emus had won, but the story doesn't end there. After the army left, the emu attacks on the farms continued, and the farmers, once again, pleaded for help. So, believe it or not, the military was sent back out for a second try later that same month. This time, Major Meredith had learned a few lessons. They had more success, reporting that they were killing about 100 emus per week, but even 10. It was a drop in the bucket. By mid-December, after killing a reported 986 emus with nearly 10,000 rounds, the operation was officially called off for good. It was clear this wasn't a cost-effective solution. The remaining thousands of emus continued to roam free. So why did the emus win? It came down to a few key factors. First, their biology. Emus are tough. Their feathers and body fat can actually offer some protection against small caliber bullets. They are also incredibly fast and agile, with unpredictable movements. Second, their tactics. As Major Meredith noted, they were not a dumb mob. They were decentralized, with individuals and small groups scattering, making them impossible targets for a weapon designed for concentrated groups of enemies. They were, in essence, the perfect guerrilla warriors. The army was using the wrong tool for the job, fighting a conventional war against an unconventional, feathered foe. In the end, the government found a more effective, though less dramatic, solution. They implemented a bounty system, paying farmers and hunters for every emu they killed. This localized, sustained effort proved far more successful than the grand military campaign. Over the next few years, tens of thousands of emus were culled through the bounty system. A massive 1,000-kilometer-long fence, known as the rabbit-proof fence, and later reinforced, also helped to keep the emus out of the agricultural areas. The Great Emu War has gone down in history as a legendary, almost mythical event. It's a classic underdog story, or I guess an underbird story. It serves as a hilarious reminder that military might isn't always the answer, and that nature, in its own strange way, can often outsmart human ingenuity. It's a lesson in humility, a reminder not to underestimate your opponent, no matter how feathery they might be. The story continues to be told and laughed about, a quirky footnote in military history that proves truth is often stranger and funnier than fiction. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this bizarre piece of history, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more strange tales from the past. Let me know in the comments what other weird historical events you'd like me to cover. See you next time.